Don't go off the rails as you express your strategic merit. We're taking a quick peek at Steam Rails to Riches. Steam Rails to Riches is a PC port of a mobile game of the original board game from 2009. Designed by Martian Wallace, players attempt to build, upgrade, and expand their railroad company while delivering packages as profitably as possible. The game reviewed fairly well enough that Mayfair decided to work with Akram Digital and Mobo Game Studio to create a digital version of the game. Steam Rails to Riches first came to mobile platforms in 2015, and has worked its way to the PC in 2017. While the game seems to follow its board game counterpart relatively well, it's a shame that the developers didn't do more with it. Graphically, the digital version uses pretty much the exact same visuals from the board game. That's not necessarily a bad thing, since it does faithfully recreate the original experience, but that's pretty much all it does. There was a real opportunity to expand the game's 1920s railroad tycoon theme, and it just isn't there. There are a few sketches every now and then to try to give it a bit more character, but overall the game feels rather lifeless, as if it's the least the developers could have done to make a digital version. Steam Rails to Riches is all about building a profitable business over a set number of turns. Each turn consists of two phases, a build phase and a move phase. At the start of the game, players bid on who goes first, second, third, and so on, and at the start of every turn, every player picks an action card. Each card does something different, so picking the correct card at the correct time is very important. Once everyone has a card, the turn begins and the first player starts laying down track. By default, everyone can place 3 pieces of track on the board, with every piece they place costing them a specific amount of money. Different tiles have different costs, and while you can take a loan out to cover the fee, being in debt at the end of the game will more than likely cause you to lose. Once everyone's placed their track, the game moves on to Phase 2, where players take turns moving around supplies. Each supply package has its own color that matches the color of a city. Getting the correct package to the correct city is how you earn points, but the key is how you get that package to its destination. Every important piece of track has an owner, and every time someone uses that track, the owner gets compensated for it. The farther you can move a package along your own track, the more points you can accumulate for that turn. Players aren't limited to tracks they own, however, and can use other players' track to move packages as long as you don't use more of your opponent's than your own. It's not ideal, since using another player's track piece will give them points and not count towards your own points. How far you can move and which cities you can make deliveries to are determined by the level of your locomotive, which can be increased by either picking a specific action card or foregoing a delivery during one of your move phases. Basically, to sum it all up, you want to make as many connections to as many places as possible, so when you make deliveries, you get a lot of points, as well as forcing your opponents to use your track when they make deliveries to get you even more points. Points earned for successful delivery can be transferred to either income or victory points. Whoever has the most victory points by the end of the game is the winner. That's only a basic summation of the rules of the game, as there are a few more that take some getting used to, and some the game doesn't tell you about all that well. While Steam Rails to Riches has a tutorial for both its standard and basic rule sets, it doesn't cover everything as well as I would have liked. The game has a lot of minute details to its rules, and while playing against the AI, I found the computer doing things I really didn't understand. The game lacks anything in the way of tooltips as well to help give players quick access to specific information, as well as what each action card actually does. There is a manual you can download as a PDF file, and you can replay the tutorials as many times as you'd like, but I'd still like to have had some in-game tips. The most the game does is tell you when you can't do something, but it's not always clear as to why. There was one particular rule I only understood after looking up how to play on Google, and finding a video going over the board games rules on Mayfair Games' YouTube channel. There's a rule about a player placing a piece of track and then not doing anything with it. Usually, players can only build off of a city or their own tracks, but if a player doesn't make a connection with a piece of track they've placed after 2 turns, it becomes unclaimed and anyone can use it. The game's a bit complicated. The PC version of Steam Rails to Riches has a few other problems that are a holdover from its days on the mobile platform. Placing a piece of track during the build phase is done by dragging and dropping track tile from the bottom of the screen onto the board. Dragging and dropping is also the same way players scroll through the track they have access to, since not all of them are shown on the screen at the same time. Due to this, many times I found myself scrolling through track tiles when I was just trying to place a track tile, which is rather annoying. A few other complaints include the fact that for some reason, you can't undo each individual action you take, but instead have to undo every action you've taken during the build phase up to the point that you press the undo button, meaning you have to start your turn all over again. Another holdover from Steam's mobile days is its DLC. The PC version costs $9.99 US, which includes single player with bots along with local and online multiplayer. But you can only play on 2 maps. Any other map has to be bought on its own for $4.99 each. I kind of understand why they did this, since the board game came with only 2 maps, one on each side of the board, with everything else sold separately as expansions. But this is a digital release of the game. It doesn't have to work that way. It'll cost you $29.95 in order to get everything the game has to offer, which is still cheaper than what the board game is listed on Amazon, but the mobile version of the game only costs $4.99 for the base game, with $2.99 per DLC map. That puts the mobile version at $16.95 US for everything. The price difference between these platforms is ridiculous, considering it's the exact same game. The game does have cross-platform multiplayer, so regardless of where you own the digital version, you can play with anybody else who owns the digital version. That is, if you can find anyone who's not using a password nor playing on a DLC map you don't own. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Steam, but I really wish they'd done more with it to give it more character. The game's complex without being overly complicated, but there's a lot that developers could have done to make this game so much better. Still, I'd recommend the game to anyone who's a fan of the original board game or digital board games in general. It's useful to have a version of the game that keeps track of the rules itself so you and your friends don't have to bicker over them. That's all I got for now. Please let me know what you think about the game or this video in the comments section. I've Mega Pie Man, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more quick peeks? In the video on the left, I took a look at Snake Pass, a 3D puzzle game with a lot of character and complex controls. Or click on the video on the right for Aklos Omega, a riot simulator set in ancient Greece.